Good evening, everyone from Boston College. I am Brian Garreau, and I am the Associate Dean for the Core Curriculum and Associate Professor of Sociology and International Studies at Boston College. Welcome to the show at 6, BC and the Common Good. Tonight's show is the final segment of the show at 6, our 26th show that we've run this summer. And here we are bringing the show home to the BC campus. And we will focus on BC's preparations for the fall semester. Throughout the summer, the show at 6 has featured friends and members of the BC community discussing a range of issues affecting our world today, all revolving around the theme of the common good. Topics this summer have included how the BC community is responding to the effects of COVID-19, to the enduring challenges of the marginalized, to our own resiliency and solidarity, and to the upbuilding of human dignity throughout the world. The show at 6 is based on the central insight of the common good. That is that the resources that humanity has and needs must be shared equitably. For instance, today each of us is called to promote the common good by social distancing, by wearing masks in public, including in the classroom, as we'll hear, and by preparing for the fall semester with unprecedented care and attention to the health and safety of our students, faculty, and staff. These practices, like other forms of solidarity, are not only for our own good, but for the common good. Now at 6:40, my co-host and I will ask our guests questions from the audience. Members of the audience can pose a question before 6:40 p.m. via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please identify yourself with your name in relationship to Boston College. Now, tonight's show is about welcoming the BC community back to campus. We will not have time to answer all of your questions about the reopening on this show, and we'll likely run out of time before getting to everyone's questions during the Q&A period. So please be sure to visit our website for complete details and frequently asked questions about the reopening of Boston College, and you can find those at bc.edu/reopen. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Professor Kathleen Bailey. Kathleen Bailey is Professor of the Practice of Political Science, Associate Professor of the Islamic Civilization and Societies Program, and Director of the Gabelli Presidential Scholars Program at Boston College. Dr. Bailey received her BA and PhD in Political Science from Boston College. Kathy?
Thank you, Brian. I'm really delighted to co-host this show with you and to introduce one of our guests, Joy Moore, who is Vice President for Student Affairs at Boston College. A secondary school and higher education administrator, Joy has served at a variety of independent schools and universities over a 35-year career. Prior to returning to Boston College in 2011, Joy served 4 years as the interim and deputy head of school at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy in Johannesburg, South Africa. She has also served as the head of school at the Archer School in Los Angeles, California, and as the associate head director of upper school at Dana Hall in Wellesley, Massachusetts. As a university administrator, she has held a variety of leadership positions at the University of California at Berkeley, the University of San Francisco, and at Boston College. Her experience extends into the field of alumni engagement and fundraising. An active local and national volunteer, Joy has served as a trustee and board member for the National Coalition of Girls Schools, the Neshoba Brooks School, Dana Hall School, the South African Heads of Independent Schools Association, and the South African Girls Schools Association. Joy chaired the annual joint conference of the National Association of Independent Schools and the Council for the Advancement of the Supportive Education, and served as a trustee on the CAPE board. As a community volunteer, she served for many years as co-president of the Wellesley chapter of the National A Better Chance organization. She has also served on the boards of Women's Lunch Place in Boston and the Newton Wellesley Hospital Foundation Board. A 1981 graduate of the Lynch School of Education, Joy is a recipient of an honorary doctorate degree in 2010 from Boston College. Just this past July, Joy was appointed the inaugural executive director of the Pine Manor Institute for Student Success at Boston College. Welcome, VP Moore.
Thank you.
And I have the pleasure of introducing David Quigley tonight, our second guest. David Quigley has served as since June 2014 as professor and provost and dean of faculties at Boston College, where he is also professor of history. A scholar of the 19th century American history, David received his BA in American Studies from Amherst College and his MA and PhD in history from New York University. His research explores the history of race and democracy in the urban United States between the Revolution and Reconstruction, with a particular focus on New York City. Between 2018 and 2014, David Quigley served as Dean of the College and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences at Boston College. As Provost, he served as co-chair of the university's strategic planning initiative that resulted in Ever to Excel, advancing Boston College's mission. Has overseen the hiring of 250 new faculty colleagues, helped lead the design and implementation of the academic programs in this 160,000 square foot home of the Schiller Institute for Integrated Science and Society, and advanced a multi-year core renewal project focused on the university's extensive undergraduate core curriculum. I hear core renewal has been a great success and the core has wonderful leadership, David, so well done. He lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts with his wife, Megan DeMott Quigley. They are proud parents of 3 sons. Welcome, David Quigley.
Thanks, Brian.
So I'll start with a question to both David and Joy, sort of as a background going into our discussion of the reopening of Boston College. But we're wondering what drew you into the work that you do, and in particular the mission of Boston College and collaborations between student affairs and academic affairs, which sometimes get stovepiped into 2 completely different, and this seems like more of a collaboration. So Joy, can you start with that?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Kathy. Thanks for that question. So I've, on a personal note, I've always been drawn to environments where people strive to do their best work each day. And I really find these spaces energizing and motivating, and also challenging. And I've been really fortunate to have worked in a number of educational settings with missions that align with my personal passions, I guess. And you know, the collaborations with academic affairs extends to mission and ministry as well. And that's really what I think creates our formative education approach. We seek, as we all know, to educate our students intellectually, spiritually, and socially. So David and Father Jack Butler and I meet regularly throughout the year to discuss opportunities for collaboration. And, for example, some of the things that we've done together, a small list, but, it's the kind of academic support that David and his team provide us for our OTE program, Options Through Education. With Mission and Ministry, they're very supportive of retreat programming, particularly new retreats developed for our LGBTQ+ students. Resident ministers living within our residence halls, and being supportive of our performing and visual arts students and activities. So that's just a small sampling of the kinds of things that we're always looking to collaborate on.
Let me just jump in there. I think one of the great pleasures of the job of being provost here is the partnership with Joy and her colleagues, and also with Jack Butler and the folks in Mission and Ministry. I think it was 3 years ago when Donna Shalala and the reaccreditation team from NECHI came to town. The leaders from a number of our peer schools were struck by the ways in which, both at the leadership level and among staff, that colleagues really take seriously the work of engaging together. I think of somebody like Bert Howell over in Mission and Ministry and the kind of credibility he and his team have built up over time in terms of developing and sustaining meaningful conversations with staff and faculty colleagues about what it is about the mission that gives life here. And so over the course of my 20+ years at BC, and especially in my time as provost, I've been, again, energized by and really inspired by the partnerships and the creativity that have come about from work between the Career Center and individual departments, between the leadership team and student affairs and folks in Center for Student Formation and individual faculty members. The wonderful kind of creativity on campus that we can tap into has really led to many of the best initiatives over the last few years. And thinking about the mission and how we all identify ourselves into the mission and how we think about the work of the university, I think it's been so important for all of us involved in the kind of reopening planning this summer, and we can talk about that from now till 7 and beyond. Back in the spring, when all of us in higher education and really all of us in American society had no choice but to shut down immediately and unprecedentedly, many of us were drawn to some of the voices of early Jesuits, the kind of language of exile, the community and dispersion that Matt Carnes down at Georgetown referred to, the ways in which the Xavier and Ignatius communications back and forth kind of without power or possibility of ever forgetting you, but the sense of trying to sustain the mission while apart. I've been thinking an awful lot this summer about the aspect of Jesuit work that I think has been most moving for me in my career is not that sense of exile or distance, but rather of being in community, the kind of sacredness of place, sacred spaces in which we work. And here I think of the urban history of Boston or New York, where a kind of, in the Catholic context, a kind of rootedness and attachment to place and neighborhood and individual buildings and spaces. And I think in my career, going back before I got to BC, but especially since I was lucky enough to arrive here, that sense of doing the work of teaching, of mentoring, of forming young people and committing to the larger community has been given life by being in community with colleagues like Joy and with our students who were lucky enough to teach. And so at the end of the day, I think there's a holiness to the work that we've been called to do. And as we think about the fall and how we're going to work together to get this right and do it together, I think we've got to be ever mindful of that larger calling to think about how in community with safety and health on our minds, we're going to be able to do the work that Boston College has done so well for so many years.
That's a fantastic answer, David. I think you put in the words a question that would be better than the one that I had, but that deep history that the Jesuit order has and its history of education does give it seems to the work that we do. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more. So I have a question related to that. Maybe I'll direct it to you and then Joy could chime in. Also inspired by another wonderful summer program that's been going on, like the Show at 6, to help keep the BC community connected and in solidarity during this time of unrest and dispersion. So as you know, Tomeo Esterlich, the director of the Center for Ignatian Spirituality, and Father Bart Giger, a Jesuit at the Institute for Advanced Jesuit Studies, this summer invited us to read some of the letters of St. Ignatius that he sent to his colleagues and students around the world. And as you know, he sent many of these letters. He sent over 7,000 of these letters. And so we've read some bits of those letters. I really got into this. I bought a whole bunch of them, and I've been looking through them. And I'm so struck by how relevant these letters are, and the messages that Ignatius was sending to his colleagues are messages that we could be sending today. So I found them to be really enlightening. I did find one in particular that I thought would be worth just reading a bit here. It's a letter that St. Ignatius wrote to the Jesuit students in Cologne, who in 1544 had been dispersed by order of the Senate in Cologne. So this snippet is called "To the Dispersed Jesuits of Cologne." And in it, it's just profound. Basically, Ignatius isn't concerned about these students maintaining their sense of community, even though they've been ordered to be dispersed, to be scattered from the campus. So he writes, and this is just a sentence: "Though separated from one another in body and in lodgings, still with God's help, it'll be easy for you to ensure that affection continues to exist and flourish among you, inasmuch as by the freely chosen pursuit of your disciplines, the goals you have set for your life, and the vows that you have duly taken, you have linked yourselves so tightly to one another." I hear you both talking about that tight connection that we have at Boston College, bringing affection into our daily lives, even as we are dispersed. This has continued in the BC community throughout the summer. We have linked ourselves tightly together through a hectic summer and in preparation for the fall. I think Tomeo and Father Bart have helped us do that. through connections to our mission at BC. The Show at 6 has helped to do this. David, you and Joy, through your frequent letters to the BC community, to incoming students and parents, they've kept us connected arguably more than ever. And many have done this work. I think, Ignatius sees these acts of affection and attention to community as building on what he calls the cement of charity. So in some ways, I suspect you would say that you're just both doing your jobs to prepare for the fall. But in my view, you're doing so much more than this precisely because you're at Boston College. So there's careful attention given to affection, to keeping community together. This all requires a kind of charity that provokes you to give more of yourselves, even when you're probably more exhausted than you've ever been in your lives. So I'm wondering if you could comment on how, our position as a Jesuit Catholic university perhaps allows us to approach this upcoming semester distinctively, maybe even, as I've seen this summer, with more grace than we might have expected.
Great question, Brian. I think something we've all been kind of thinking about and will continue pondering. I think you're exactly right that the work that Brian Fleming and Father Jim Keenan put into designing and sustaining the Show at 6 is a great model of the ways in which we're doing something that I don't think a lot of other schools have kind of developed over the course of the summer. I think that sense of community and thinking about what's most important, the frame of the common good, as you've talked about earlier. To my mind, and you talked about your summer reading, I went back to a book that was so formative for me back in high school, Camus' The Plague, and that really was moved when I went back and read it again. And that experience of kind of reflecting on a devastating experience, but also humanizing and transformative. And I think there's something lost if what we're getting back to on September 1st or January 1st or September 2021 is the old normal. Same old, we're just going to turn back. I think there's been something remarkable. Again, the word transcendent or holy comes to mind. There was an America Magazine piece written by a graduate student at STM back in April about the March weekend when all of our undergraduates, without any warning, had to go off back home. I had tears in my eyes as I read it. I've got goosebumps as I'm thinking about that piece. What have we learned about each other? What have we missed? Again, my hat's off to every faculty, colleague across campus who's been using Zoom and Meets and Hangouts to do the work of the university. But what did we learn in that process? What was missing, and what are we going to recommit to? What are we going to redouble our belief and commitment to as we come back into human contact with each other, physically distant as it must be as we go forward? I think that we've all learned a great deal. I can't put into words all that we've learned, but I'm looking forward not just this fall, but over the next few years as researchers, as teachers, as students, as friends, as fellow human beings, to think about the reflection of the last 6 months as we make BC and our service to the larger society even more committed to the common good.
So, to pick up part of that, I can only imagine, or I cannot even imagine, how you plan for a reopening of a large university such as Boston College during a global pandemic that is unprecedented, and there's no roadmap. So many of the things that normally you would never have to think about now suddenly are upmost in your mind. Can you tell us, David, how decisions were made? And since this is such an evolving situation, to make it more complex, how they are being made about the reopening. What has the planning process been like? What has the collaborative endeavor turned out to be? And was there anything that surprised you about that?
For those of you who have been subjected to 2 webinars with me in one day, I referenced on a 400-person faculty webinar earlier today that today's the 6-month anniversary since my first COVID planning meeting on Valentine's Day, for that matter. But we're entering into the second half year of life with COVID in the university. again, it's required all hands on deck. I mean, regular communication among university leadership, Fatherley, the vice presidents, deans, vice provosts, meeting all the time, discussing, engaging with colleagues. I think of what Greg Kalsher did in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, the various working groups, and bringing together folks working on laboratory work, thinking about large lecture classes, distinctive first-year courses like CORE that Brian helps oversee. I think that we've had so many voices and points of wisdom over the course of the summer, and which has been critical because there's been so much change over time. I'm sitting here on August 14th, very much gratified by the trend line in the Massachusetts Department of Public Health data, including the 4 o'clock report today, in terms of positivity rates and where the state is heading. I think we're in a good context for reopening as the summer plays out. Again, if you had asked me that 3 weeks ago, there were worries as we saw spikes, not just in other parts of the country, but even here in Massachusetts, some worrying signs. So I think the ability to shift as needed has been critical as we've gone along. As provost, I'll turn it over to Joy in a second. She can talk about the remarkable work she and her team have done. I've partly gotten through it by having regular ongoing Zooms and calls with large groups or one-on-one with provosts across the Jesuit network, with the ACC, with the Boston area, the Colonial Group, numbers of those ever since March and all the way through, as of last night, another one, and we'll have more scheduled for next week. So learning from others in higher ed, even as we're taking different approaches to reopening in different contexts. And the last thing is learning from and engaging with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, with public leadership across the area, Boston, Newton, the region. I think we've learned a good deal over time. I think things seem to be heading in the right direction, and to get through the fall semester, we're gonna have to continue working as a team across different functions in the university setting, but also with wise figures beyond even the Boston College community. Turn to Joy if she wants to talk a little bit about the work we've been doing.
Yes, thanks so much, David. And I think I'm going to circle back to Brian's question too, just to talk a little bit about what allows us, I guess, to approach this semester distinctively and with some sense of grace. And I think we're able to do that really because of our tradition of being men and women for others. And, you know, this practice and this way of being is embedded in the BC culture. And, you know, Jesuit education has long stressed the importance of care for others, like those St. Ignatius letters that you were referencing. And that's going to be particularly important in the coming months to really maintain our campus ethos and to advance the common good. And I'm also going to make a plug for the Eagles Care Pledge that we are going to be asking all members of the BC community to commit to. And, you know, it stresses that in order to protect the health of our campus and our surrounding community and to reduce the risks related to the coronavirus, that everyone must do their part, especially when it comes to, and you're going to be hearing this a lot this semester, wearing those masks and physical distancing and washing hands and self-monitoring symptoms that you might have, and then just reminding others of these practices as well. So I think we can do all of this with a great deal of faith, some patience, and a lot of grit, because it won't be easy, but it's necessary if we all want to have and be on campus for the full semester. I think we're gonna have to be kinder to each other. We're gonna have to be more patient, more forgiving, and more understanding, because people are gonna forget to wear their masks, but you're gonna have to remind them that they need to find one and put one on in a gentle, helpful way. And so, you know, everyone on campus just really needs to think about being intentional about our work together. And we have to understand that we all have a personal responsibility to keep the campus as safe as we possibly can. Mm. And now just sort of jumping to the question about how decisions being made and so forth. As David said, you know, there were a number of committees, 2 main committees that met pretty much weekly. And then from those committees, there were subcommittees and there were task forces and many small groups that were meeting to just go through the details of everything. And so, this would be residential life and dining services and facilities and housekeeping and BCPD and student involvement office and many more. And so as you can imagine, every one of those offices and departments had many specific things that they needed to figure out and work out, and then figuring out the way to communicate it as well to the students and all of us returning to campus. So it was a very busy and active summer, to say the least.
This comment that you both keep bringing up about folks being basically more connected than ever before, folks working with one another, different units connecting constantly, much more than, there have been connections in the past, of course, but the connections are in like hyper mode, and it's absolutely necessary to do this. I somewhat some of the literature on disasters in sociology. In the short term, this isn't a problem. People make friends easily when there's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Become friends, neighbors become friends, people work together to get beyond a disaster. But David, as you were saying, this has been going on for half a year now. I think that point you made now, this is going to reshape the way we understand the Boston College community is a really profound one. These things changed forever, as I think you mentioned we should all reflect on, hopefully for the better. Joy, could you say a little bit more about the academic experience, what it'll look like for students? We heard about the pledge and how every student's going to really have to rise up. And that's not a line that I came up with. That's from Hamilton. Could you tell us a little bit about the academic experience and what it will look like for students? What might a day of a student look like?
Sure, happy to. I'll let David talk specifically about the academic realm, but just a day in the life of a student. It's going to look like waking up and putting that mask on, and then making sure that you have it as you leave, your residence hall, and when you're walking through campus, also having it on and trying to keep distance from one another. But, once students are in their classrooms with their professors, it's going to be sort of business as usual, aside from, the fact that they'll have their mask on. But, the learning is going to take place. The engagement with their professors is going to take place. The opportunities to still meet with their professors is going to happen. So all of that will be the same. The classroom setups are de-densified, so there are fewer chairs in there, and so there'll be a little different look to some things, and places where it's going to identify where you should sit, and if you're in a more lecture style classroom. But then when it comes time for your student activities, those programs and student orgs are still going to be active and recruiting new members to the organization, and meeting, whether they do it virtually or in small groups. And if they do it in small groups, then we're encouraging that they meet outside, as long as the weather is still good for that, and keeping the numbers under 15 or 20 or whatever they are at the current time for the mask guidelines and so forth. And of course, they have to wear their mask and be physical distance and so forth. So that will, it's not going to be the exact same because they're not going to be able to hang out in spaces inside, like they normally would. But for now, they can still have the opportunity to get together. When it comes to food, always important for all of us. Dining Facilities has really done a tremendous job in just sort of resetting everything to meet all of the guidelines and maintain all of the top health standards that they've always had. But you'll see de-densified looks within the Corcoran Commons and Kearney Dining Hall and so forth. And also, food choices, more grab and go options. And I think the mobile app for ordering food from BC Dining will be up and running. They don't deliver, but you can order it and pick it up as well. So, that will, it'll look different in the dining. I think probably a number of students are going to choose to grab and go back to their residence hall probably and eat, and that's fine. Well, so, we're going to try and have things be as robust as we, can possibly be, being mindful of the guidelines that we have to live by so that we can all still be here for the full semester.
Just to talk about the academic experience, I think that there were two key constraints that we operated within. One is the physical distancing guidelines from both CDC and Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, as they were guiding what could go on in an educational setting, what kinds of gatherings you could have, how many students could be in a space, how much distancing you needed to practice. So that was one factor. And then the other is the fact that our faculty, like every one of our peer schools among the nation's great research universities, we have a number of faculty who skew to the older side of the demographic spectrum, and then others with some significant health challenges. So we put in place an accommodations process where around a quarter of faculty received accommodations, but then in addition to teach remotely, and then some additional courses, large lecture classes, and some that we needed to design for students, especially international, who couldn't get back to campus because of visa or travel restriction reasoning. We have around a little over a third of our courses that will be offered remotely in online forms this fall. Although in many cases, I think that we will have opportunities for students to have some meaningful experiences at the departmental level, even when they have those online courses. The large majority of those other courses will meet with the professor and the full class coming together. What's going to be different about that is they all have been moved into larger classrooms. So if you have a seminar of 15, you're going to be in a classroom that could accommodate typically 40 or 50, if not more. Large lecture halls will be used, but they will be bringing together classes of 20, 30, or 40. So I think that those classes should work roughly like we would have in the past, except if I was teaching this semester, which I'm not in the fall, it would be a little bit strange to be in a room where you had so much room, but such is life in the fall of 2020. I think the most interesting approach that we'll learn a great deal about over the next 3 months is the hybrid courses, the hopscotching, as my friend Andy Boynton, the dean of the Carroll School, likes to describe it, where we have classrooms where at least half of the students in a class will be able to meet in a given class period, but not the 100% of the students. So the technology in those classes and the faculty have been working to figure out ways where one half of the students can be in class and the other half of class can follow along as the semester plays out. I think some faculty are really looking forward to the challenge of seeing how they can do this, including broadcasting to students in other parts of the world in real time. I think we're going to be much better positioned to be able to deliver on that kind of simulcasting as time plays out. But that, I think, is going to be, for faculty and students alike, something fairly different from what Boston College students would typically have experienced in the past. Libraries will be open. Tom Wall and the University Library staff have been working all summer. There will be capacity constraints there. We're very proud of the 24-hour service that we're able to provide most years. This year, we're going to close at 2 in the morning. I think there are going to be a few hours overnight where we're going to close so we can do those deep cleans to keep public spaces as healthy as possible. But we're trying to have as many academic experiences as possible in real time with other people, and then supplementing it with technology. The Lowell Humanities Series, our signature lecture series, is going to have some of their great speakers providing Boston College community webinars. Maggie Haberman, the great White House correspondent for the New York Times, will be doing an election-themed Lowell lecture. I think it's in October, that will be live streamed to our students and faculty. So I would have been even happier to have Maggie here with 1,000 people attending the talk. But I'll certainly be on the line that night. And I think we've got a lot of creativity from faculty colleagues like Kathy and Brian trying to figure out how do we deliver a really robust set of programs this fall.
Well,
Go ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
Just to add to that a little bit, David, we didn't figure this out by ourselves. I know we've got the most brilliant faculty on the face of the earth, but we had a lot of help from the CTE and CETO, and while they didn't have a pat answer for everybody or just one model, the idea was to get together and think about different ways that you could present your course in a way that you felt comfortable with, and you could deliver it in a way that students would do their best learning. So they've really been fabulous. They have so many different webinars every single week, and chances for faculty to talk to one another, to exchange ideas. So I think, they really also deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, Kathy, I was going to jump in with almost the same thing. I think the classroom has really shown how the BC community is more tightly linked than ever before. We've had collaborations between CEDL and CTE, Brian Blakely and Stacy Groders and their teams. The folks within the core have been working with Andy Boynton in the Carroll School of Management, along with Greg Kalsher, to find ways in which we can make the classroom as accessible as possible to students in it and not in it. And I just see a lot of energy and positivity around this rethinking of the classroom. It's really been incredible to witness.
So just moving on to, a topic that, David, you talked a lot about today, and there certainly could be students, parents, and maybe some faculty who are just learning about our testing regimen. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that, because it does start on Monday. But then also connected to that, if a student ends up testing positive, or contact tracing makes them quarantine or be isolated for a little bit, that could produce a bit of anxiety. And I'm wondering what mental health resources the university is providing, because it is a worrisome time.
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the testing and then pass it along to Joy to talk about the way in which we'll be caring for students and other community members with the results of that testing. On the webinar for faculty earlier today, I had Welkin Johnson, the chair of our biology department and a really acclaimed virologist, talking about his experience and the leading hand he had in putting together Boston College's testing approach. So over the next 2 weeks, starting at, I think, 7 a.m. on Monday the 17th and running through the evening of Sunday the 30th, we're going to test 18,000 members of the Boston College community in Conte Forum, with a couple of satellite locations at peak times on Upper Campus and on Newton. The approach here is to have a baseline assessment of the entire community, and we've been paying attention to what other universities are doing. This testing is being conducted under the auspices of the University Health Services here at Boston College, led by Dr. Doug Comeau, who is part of Student Affairs with VP Moore, but the tests will be sent over to the Broad Institute over in Kendall Square in Cambridge. The Los Angeles philanthropist Eli Broad set it up, but it's scientists from Harvard Med, Harvard University, MIT, leading life scientists, and they have the capacity to do over 100,000 tests a day for higher ed in the Northeast. We're blessed to have them nearby. There was a question I saw in the Q&A about Holy Cross's announcement earlier this week. And what Holy Cross is doing and why they made the decision earlier this week, I'll leave it to Father Burrows and others in Worcester to explain. We've been reassured at every turn by Eric Lander and other leaders at the Broad. We've been using the Broad all summer for our football program and other early stage testing, and have been impressed with the rapid turnaround, and we're confident that we're going to be able to go forward. At the same time, we have an ability to do rapid result testing in UHS with a piece of equipment that was acquired this summer, and even more so to do nearly 1,000 tests a day in Professor Johnson's lab on the 5th floor of Higgins Hall. So we have substantial in-house capacity to do symptomatic testing, and as needed to supplement the asymptomatic surveillance testing that will be done over the course of the semester in partnership with the Broad. As Professor Johnson laid out today, and I think by Monday we should have his slides on the FAQ page for the reopening website. So for people who want more information, you can learn it there, because I'm an urban historian, not a world-class virologist. Laid out the smart thinking of the communities, the clusters of folks on campus who are going to be brought in for that regular surveillance testing: nursing students who are in clinical placements, dining workers, RAs, certain frontline folks who are going to have high contact, where the scientists and medical professionals on campus have put them into the queue for more regular testing, and then there will be random sampling of the larger university community. the beginning of the summer, we were thinking 1,000 to 1,500 on that weekly basis. We can certainly expand it upward, whether to 2,000 or beyond. I think that will be something that we will continue to explore and make the best decision for the community as the semester goes on. But we are blessed by both the in-house talent that we have and also the partnership with the Broad, not too far from where I live over in Cambridge. Joy, do you want to talk a little bit about the concern about mental health and the results of those tests?
Yes, certainly, and care for our students. So with all the testing, we know that some are going to test positive. And so we have made provisions for isolation and quarantine accommodations for students who do become or test positive. And we will have really support from the residential life team, who will be there supervising or overseeing the students who go to quarantine. These are off-campus locations. 2 of the locations are within, sort of 5 miles of Boston College, and a third location is about 12 or 14 miles from BC, so pretty close, but supported by residential life and obviously the University Health Services, so the nurses will be checking in on them, and dining services to provide meals for them. So we had a little sample of this in the spring when we closed school down, and so we got some protocols in place at that point. So we were able to pick up those protocols and just multiply them because the numbers, of course, are larger because we have the entire community back with us. But I think we're in really good shape for the care of students. Also, I should just say that if a student does test positive or they need to be in quarantine, there's also, we would encourage those students, if they can, to go home, to be in their home and quarantining there, isolating there if they need to. Now that's only provided that, their home is safe and there's no one there that has an underlying health condition or anything of that sort. And if it's not too far to go, but health-wise, that would be the best. And then just on the mental health side, I mean, we certainly expect that students are going to experience more anxiety and stress given the uncertainties of the coronavirus, and also adjusting to all the new guidelines and protocols, and not being able to visit with friends who are at nearby colleges and universities, and I think those things are just going to add up and be stressful. So our counseling team is prepared for that, and they've got a strong team, and they have an additional staff person who's joined the team over the summer to assist with that. But they've been doing group sessions all summer via Zoom, and they also, of course, still do their one-on-one counseling. They did a lot of referrals over the summer to just bridge that gap for the students, and then the various sort of telehealth options that students have. So I think we're fairly shored up in that area.
Mm.
Well, we have a lot of really great questions, and I wish we could get to them all, but I'll just start out with this one because I want to know the answer too. This is from Jill Rocka, an incoming freshman parent, and she would like to know, will freshman convocation still take place with Bruce Springsteen in the football stadium?
So I don't believe Bruce Springsteen is going to be coming to Alumni Stadium, but we still may have Bruce Springsteen present to the students. I think they're working out what that might look like in a virtual context.
Hmm. We have another good question from someone, Jen T, Arts and Sciences 92 grad and parent of an incoming 2024 first year. Jen says that she's been very impressed with BC's planning for the fall, including your communication with parents and students. But at the same time, they realize that you are dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. So knowing that COVID spreads most at at large indoor gatherings and knowing from experience the prevalence of off-campus parties, how will you work to educate and make sure students, especially those juniors living off campus, are following the state gathering rules?
Mm. So needless to say, that of course is going to be one of our greatest challenges, but we're up for the challenge. So just in regards to education and getting students up to speed, we partnered with UGBC, the leadership of UGBC, and we have webinars that have been going on for the last couple of weeks by department. So residential life has done one, student conduct has done one, dining services, academic support has done a webinar. So those have been, I think, helpful, particularly for the students, and they're geared for the students as well. And then we also have a group of, we're calling them right now our health ambassadors, who are going to be out and about around campus, just making sure that students have their masks on and that they're physical distancing and that they are, adhering to the various guidelines. Now, when it gets to the parties, I mean, we have a no party policy, and so that means no parties, but are they going to try and have parties? Probably so. And then when that happens and the resident directors or the RAs have to go in and break those up, then those students get referred to student conduct, and they'll have to go through the conduct process, because we know it's very serious. And I think for the students listening, if they really want to be here for the full semester and not have us close down, then they're going to really have to follow the rules and the guidelines so that we can keep the spread mitigated and not have a problem. So that's what we're hoping and expecting. And, we communicate in the same way with our students who live off campus. I mean, they're fully embedded in all the communications that we send out, and certainly have the same code of conduct that they have to live under. So that's what we're expecting, and we believe the students will rise to the occasion.
Because it also fits in with BC's mission of men and women for others and care for the common good.
Right.
If they're true to all of that, they are going to care about one another, and they'll care about staying on campus and keeping us healthy.
Right,
So
exactly.
it does fit nicely. So I'm going to combine two questions from both from students. One, Arturo Balaguer, a rising senior and history major, David. He's asking, what was the process of deliberating over whether or not to bring students to campus? And Ryan Patrick, an incoming freshman, says, with many schools across the Northeast recently announcing that they no longer plan to bring students to campus this fall, like Columbia, Georgetown, Princeton, is there a possibility that Boston College may do the same within the next 2 weeks?
Good questions. Let me first underscore what Joy Moore said about the kind of not just collective but individual responsibility. The way we're going to get through this is by all working together. Our best selves are going to carry us forward, and we're as strong as our weakest link as we think about the fall semester. We all have to do our best here. This is uncharted territory. There's no handbook for any of us in getting through this, and people need to step up. I think we all had the experience of March and April and early May. Nobody wants to go back to that at Boston College, in the Boston area, nationally. It's up to each and every one of us, and what Joy said is exactly right. As to the second question, I think anything is possible. Thinking of a decision that's going to be made over the next 2 weeks to abruptly change course is very difficult for me to fathom at this point, especially given the reports out of Mass DPH over the last 10 days. There's a good deal of encouraging data in the local area of the Boston Globe's op-ed, the editorial board, their editorial yesterday about following the science for school opening, given what we're seeing in the Commonwealth right now. I think there's a good deal of momentum around opening, even with some exceptions nearby, as was mentioned with Holy Cross earlier. So again, can't give any 100% guarantees in this year of 2020 other than expect the unexpected, but I think we're very confident at this point. In terms of the decision making, I'll talk a little bit about it and again pass it back to Joy if she wants to talk. I think one thing, and I've seen it with Father Leahy, certainly from me and other colleagues on campus, there's been an ongoing education. It's one of the things I like best about the job of provost is you're learning all the time about political science and sociology and virology and every other field that again, not my specialties. And I know we've all been going back to school to learn about public health, to learn about the ways in which we can approach this. I think there's been an ongoing education, sharing interesting leads. I know in the president's group among the independent colleges and universities in Massachusetts, ACUM, Father Leahy has grown to really admire the leadership of Tony Monaco at Tufts University, Paula Johnson at Wellesley, both of them, I think they're both MD, PhDs, but certainly with extensive experience in the life sciences, and just seeing how the presidents themselves have been in touch with each other. It's been helpful, both for the kind of, you were talking about student support, I think for senior administrators, we need the support and the kind of engagement with others as we're getting through this together. But I think that's been a key piece of it. The other is to just realize this is evolving. It's not as though you make a decision one day and you just close your eyes and you come back 3 weeks, 6 months, 2 years later, and everything's still in place. One instance of this, going to Arturo, who's been one of my mentees since he was an entering freshman, unbelievably 3 years ago, is just thinking about the Thanksgiving closing. And if you look at our peer schools in New England, BU and Tufts are going to keep students, or they're intending to bring students back after the Thanksgiving holiday. Our academic calendar hasn't changed. Some of our peer schools here and others nationally have decided to call it quits right before Thanksgiving. We've made a commitment to the community to assess the course of the virus, the course of campus conditions, and by late October, if not sooner, make an announcement as to whether we need to change. I've been telling anybody I've been talking to among the faculty that we should be prepared that anything is possible come early December, and be ready. If we're going to teach on campus or teach remotely, we've got to be prepared for that. But I think that openness to changing conditions and making the best evidence with the maximum information at hand. The first time we got that question in early July, my response was pretty easy, because I said at that point, it's 20 weeks away until Thanksgiving. Making a decision in early July about what conditions would obtain in late November was ridiculous, since we weren't even 20 weeks into the pandemic at that point, at least in the Boston area. I think as we get further and deeper into this, using the best data, best information on campus, working across areas, having ongoing dialogue and discussion, we're trying to get to the best decisions one by one for the BC community.
And I would just simply add to that you know, I think once we realized that the virus was going to be with us for a while, there was a sense of, well, we need to figure out then how we can live amongst this virus, since it's going to be here. And best to get started and start to practice the things that we know we're going to have to be doing day in and day out now, to be in community. And I think we all, you know, being human beings, need and want to be in community and not isolated in our homes, you know, not going out and seeing people. And so we still recognize that there's a risk, but we know that there are things that you can mitigate the risk. And so we're just going to have to be very vigilant around maintaining and monitoring each other to ensure that we don't have a spread, and that we can continue to be together on campus for the full semester.
So Joy, you've encouraged me to ask a question I didn't have prepared. I'm sorry for that, but
It's okay.
As you're talking, you know, I think the theme of this whole show has been about BC and the common good, and you're both articulating that need to pursue the common good so articulately, and it's so embedded in everything we do. I think if anyone's seen those over the course of the summer, they recognize that about Boston College, and incoming students should be ready to be enveloped in that. So I'm asking you about challenges that are facing us in the fall. I'd like to ask you both if you could tell us, you know, something about the opportunities that you see coming with the fall semester. What are some positive things that could come out of this situation, which has been traumatic, terrible on so many levels? What are the possibilities for us as a university?
Well, you know, on the student side, you know, I have already just seen the way that students are reimagining how they can continue to stay connected and be involved in their student organizations and activities. And, you they are just focused on being able to figure out ways to be together. So I think all of that energy and creativity is something that has come from this situation. And I think, students are geared up to really care for each other in ways that they may not have in the past. And so they know they're going to have to watch out for one another, because watching out for one another helps them as well. So, there's something to that, to be able to support somebody else and know that it's going to have an effect on you as well. So I think those are some of the things that I've started to see early on in finding goodness out of this situation.
Well
Thanks
said.
for that, Joy.
Let me jump in because I like that question. I think I can connect my answer back to one of the questions that came in about a best case scenario for us. And at this Jesuit institution, I shouldn't quote a Calvinist, but John Winthrop, one of my favorite documents in U.S. history to teach is Model of Christian Charity by John Winthrop back in the 17th century. And it's the city upon a hill, that Boston and New England will be as a city upon a hill. And that will be a model for others to look on. And I think as we go into the fall, and partly I'm mindful of this with my 17-year-old rising senior at Cambridge Ringen Latin School, who was not too happy about a fully remote start to the year. But if we do this right, if we pull this together, if we're able to work together day by day, each of us in community with each other, and do the right thing consistently across the fall, I hope that we can be, as our last campaign that was launched in 2008 put it, a light to the world, light the world. We become a model of a place that, taking care of each other, are able to begin to find our way out of the wilderness of the last 6 months and onto the kind of world that we want to hand down to the generation of students we're lucky enough to teach.
Well, I want to thank Provost Quigley and VP Moore for taking the time to talk to us and help us think these things through, and for shedding some light on what's sure to be an interesting and probably challenging fall semester, but a challenge that the BC community is up to. And I think you've given us confidence that we can do this. If we remember our responsibilities to one another and to the common good, and to put that into practice every single day, we can do this. We will do this.
We do, right?
Amen.
Amen. So also thank you to my co-host Brian, and thank you to the audience for your engagement today and throughout this semester. This is usually the spot where we would talk about the upcoming show, but sadly this is our last segment of the show at 6, which has covered this wide range of topics and conversations with phenomenal guests over the last 13 weeks. You can find all the interviews, all 26 of them, at the Show at 6 and the Common Good website. And you just scroll down and look for archives, and you'll see all of them by the date. We'd also like to acknowledge the incredible work of the Planning Committee and the producers of the Show at 6. None of this would have been possible without their tremendous effort, their vision, their time, their energy, and just, the idea that, seems to have cropped out of nowhere, but was just such a great thing over the summer to bring the community, the BC community, the alumni community together. So in particular, I just want to give a shout out to Jim Keenan, Tom Childs, Brian Fleming, Kat Gomes, Gori Pandy, Aidan O'Neill, Bert Howell, Billy Sue, and of course, Brian Garreau. I will say that we hope to see you back here next summer. Be well, stay safe, and good night from Boston College. Good night.